So then we measure brain waves. When your brain is active and you are present and you're aware and you have your attention on your body, you have your attention on your environment, and you have your attention on time, your brain's job is to create coherence between the outer world and the inner world, to create meaning. And a lot of information that's coming into your brain causes your brain to move into what's called beta brainwaves. If you close your eyes and you have less information coming into your brain, and all of a sudden, the less sensory information, you're no longer seeing, and there's soft music playing in the background, and you're not getting up and walking and experiencing or tasting or feeling, the less sensory information in your brain causes your brain waves to slow down into alpha. And in alpha, you tend to pay attention more to your inner world and less attention on your outer world. And you tend to think in pictures instead of the voice that's always talking to you in your head. And this is a very creative state. And then, of course, if your body starts to fall asleep and your mind is awake, now you're in this state called theta, and the door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind opens up very wide. And then there's delta, which is when a person falls asleep in restorative sleep, but now we have brain measurements of people in delta, and their brain is doing something very different. And their bodies sound asleep, but they are super lucid, and they're having a very transcendental moment. Now take a look at gamma. Gamma is an aroused state, a very, very superconscious state where the brain is producing a whole lot more energy in there. And it looks a lot like the stress state in high beta, but it's not, because it's a faster frequency and it has a different signature. And I want to talk about the difference today between gamma and high beta, because I want to show you what happens when a person's brain switches on and connects to the field. So here's delta, 0.5 to 4 seconds. Here's theta, 4 to 8 cycles per second. Here's alpha. Here's low-level beta. Here's mid-range beta. Here's high beta. Look, here's gamma running right alongside high beta, and some gammas are even faster. That's a aroused state. So in high beta, you can be aroused from from some stress in your life. But when we have a high level of gamma in the brain, the arousal is not taking place from anything out there. The arousal is actually energy moving from the body up into the brain. And this whole system opens up. A gate at the brainstem opens up. And all the energy that you use for ejaculation or orgasm, all the energy that you use to digest a meal, all the energy that you use for the fight or flight response, instead of it being released out, is being released up. And that gate opens up and the brain goes into a very, very super aroused state. And that state is super consciousness. So check it out. When you're born, you're totally subconscious mind, because children's brain waves are very slow for the first 6 years of their life. They have no analytical mind. So big boys don't cry. Little girls should be seen and not heard. You're not very good at math. Money is the root of all evil. And people take that information as children in all the way into their subconscious, and they begin to learn by these positive and negative identifications and associations that give rise to what we call our habits or our behaviors. A good example of positive identification is when you're young and you cry out for milk. You learn to associate crying out with being fed, so you develop a behavior that's constructive. A good example of a negative association is putting your finger in the light socket. And the moment you notice a change in your internal state, you pay attention to what's causing it in your outer world, and your brainwaves start to pick up more and more because you're paying more attention to the outer world. And somewhere between the ages of 6 and 9, as brainwaves change, we develop our analytical mind. And our analytical mind acts as a barrier or a filter to separate our conscious mind from our subconscious mind. Our conscious mind is 5% of our total mind. It's made up of things like logic and reasoning, which gives rise to our creativity, our will, our faith. And then 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old are all these memorized programs subconsciously. So then the analytical mind is always deciding what's good and bad, what's right and wrong, what's positive, what's negative, what's past, what's future. The analytical mind helps us to reason and discern in our life. But when you throw in the hormones of stress, the arousal causes us to overly analyze. How many people have been under stress and you just can't stop thinking? That's when the brain moves into those high elevated states. The whole purpose of meditation, though, is to slow your brain waves down, get beyond the analytical mind, and enter the operating system where you're taking these limited beliefs or limited behaviors or limited habits and changing them to more constructive ones. That means then you can't do it with your conscious mind. You got to get beyond your analytical mind and enter this operating system. So some people have a very thin analytical mind, and when they have a thin analytical mind, they're more suggestible to information. Others of us have a little bit more of a dense analytical mind, and we have to work a little harder to get beyond it. But there's a formula that we use to teach people how to do it, and anybody can do it once they understand the formula. So the more analytical you are, the less suggestible you are to information. And suggestibility is your ability to accept, believe, and to surrender to information without analyzing it. The less analytical you are, the more suggestible you are to information. Now that's important because when your brain moves into trance and you slow your brain waves down, you tend to be less analytical and you tend to be more suggestible. If you get driven by the hormones of stress and now your brain is overly analytical, it's not a good time to learn. It's not a good time to take information in. So we know how to induce trance now in our work. And when a person is in trance, they're more suggestible. That means their brain waves slow down and they're less analytical. When you look at a television screen, your brain, for the most part, is in alpha. You're like this. And then here comes the commercial. You know, Gene, as you age, your immune system gets weaker and weaker and weaker. Or you need this flu shot. And everybody takes that in without analyzing it. So then you got to slow your brain waves down. You got to go from this high-range beta to the mid-range beta to the low-level beta. You got to cross the analytical mind, and when you do, brain waves slow down, and now you're in the operating system. So beta leads to what? Alpha. Alpha leads to what? Theta leads to what? And we can say that beta and alpha represent the conscious mind, and alpha, theta, and delta represent the subconscious mind. Are you with me still? So as you slow your brain waves down, you move right out of your thinking neocortex, and consciousness begins to flow right into the subconscious centers of the brain. And your limbic brain is the seat of your autonomic nervous system. And your autonomic nervous system is the automatic nervous system that keeps you healthy. And when you begin to connect to the autonomic nervous system, all of a sudden then it begins to do a better job in healing you. So then many people spend a lot of their time stressed out by the hormones of stress, and they could never change their brain waves to get in the operating system to reprogram their body again. And they can think positively all they want with the 5% of their conscious mind in their neocortex, but that thought has no effect on the body's automatic system. Learn how to slow your brain waves down, and you drop a thought in here, all of a sudden begins to reprogram the autonomic nervous system. And we have great research to show that that's possible. Now, when we're measuring brain waves, we're not looking for any type of brain waves. We're looking for very organized brain waves, very coherent brain waves. And the more coherent your brain waves are, the more the brain is functioning as a whole, in unison. Incoherence is like a group of drummers banging on the drums all at the same time with no rhythm. And your brain, when it's incoherent, you're incoherent. When your heart is not coherent, you don't trust yourself. When your heart is not coherent, you tend to be resentful, impatient, frustrated, and people spend a lot of their time living that way. So then, how do we create coherence in the brain and the heart? Well, when you live by the hormones of stress, and you're trying to control everything in your life, you're shifting your attention from one person to one thing, to one problem, to another person, to another place, to another thing, every one of those elements has a neurological network in your brain. So the arousal of stress causes you then to over-focus on all the things in your life. And as you think about all these problems, you activate all the circuits. And the brain is very incoherent. And under stress, you narrow your focus on the cause, on matter. Teaching people how to open their awareness and focus on nothing is part of the formula. As they begin to go from a convergent focus to a divergent focus, the act of sensing space causes you to stop thinking. And as you stop thinking, you no longer stay in that beta state, and brain waves begin to slow down into alpha, but not just any kind of alpha. All of a sudden, you start to see the brain start to synchronize. More communities of neurons begin to join a bigger community. And what syncs in the brain starts to link in the brain. And all of a sudden, the brain and the heart start functioning in a more coherent way. So if you have a coherent energy, we call that health. We call incoherence disease. And I say, according to the quantum model of reality, all disease is a lowering of frequency in an incoherent message. So if you can lay a coherent signature over an incoherent signature, it's going to entrain it and create more order, and then we call that a healing. How many people are with me? So this is the best way that I can describe coherence in the brain. Let each one of these neurological networks represent, each one of these metronomes represent a neurological network in your brain. Is that coherence or incoherence? So that's disorder, yes? This is a brain that's in high beta, that's under stress. Your brain's not working right. You got a lot of chatter going on in your head. You can't think clearly. But if you start applying the formula and you go from a narrow focus to an open focus and you sense space, sense energy, you put your attention on nothing, the act of connecting to that field begins to create more order in the brain. And if you keep applying it, and you keep applying it, more and more networks of neurons start to synchronize. More order or less order now? If you keep opening your awareness, more and more neurons join the community. More order. It's exactly what happens in the brain and the heart when you apply the formula. More order. More order. Now, check out this stubborn neurological network over here. That's the one that says, I can't, there's something wrong with me, it's too hard, I'll never change, I'm unworthy. But if you keep applying the formula, keep opening your awareness, we've seen this on thousands of brain scans, sooner or later, coherence is going to consume incoherence, and everybody's going to dance to the same rhythm. So we've done thousands and thousands and thousands of brain scans. We measure 19 different compartments of the brain. We measure muscle tension at times, and we measure how the heart interacts with the brain. Now, those 19 compartments of the brain, when they're all dancing to the same beat, when they're all synchronized, we see all these hills and valleys lining up, and we would call that coherence. If one part of the brain is out of order with another, then you're going to see that they're not lined up, and you're going to see some of the valleys connecting to some of the hills, and we would call this incoherence. They're not in rhythm any longer. How many people understand? You got it? So check it out. This is a normal brain. There's 19 different compartments. This is, well, low-level beta. There's not a lot happening here. Now watch a person going into meditation. That's synchronized alpha brainwaves. See how they're all lined up? This is a brain that's highly organized in a very alpha coherent state. Here's another person. Check it out, and their entire brain is in alpha. Here's another person, global coherence. Look at all the alpha. Everything's lining up. This is a very organized, healthy brain. This person is in synchronized theta brainwave patterns. They're in theta, and their brain is very orderly and synchronized. Now, we're going to look at some brain scans, so I just want to show you a few things here. This is delta, this is theta, this is alpha, this is beta, and all of this is high beta. Now, when you see a lot of red in the brain, it means that there's a lot of activity or too much energy or over-aroused. You got it? So red means there's a lot of energy, yes? The thicker the red line, the further away from normal it is. Now check this out. If you see a lot of blue in the brain, in delta or theta, alpha or beta or high beta, it means there's not enough energy in the brain, or it's under-aroused, or there's less activity. So different compartments don't talk well to each other here, and in this state, there's a lot of chatter going on. There's too much activity. You got it? So take a look at this person. Comes to an event. This is the frontal lobe up here. What color do you see in the frontal lobe? Blue, yes? So it means the frontal lobe is shut down. Now, the frontal lobe is the boss of the brain. So if the boss is out to lunch, the rest of the brain is having a party. This is anxiety. Now, take a look at just 3 days of meditation. See any red in there? If you don't see any blue, you don't see any red, you see this pink color, that's normal. This person healed themselves of anxiety in 3 days. Another person, look at all this red and high beta here. Take a look at his brain just a few days later. Healed himself of anxiety in a very short amount of time. This is a person with Parkinson's disease, a deficiency in dopamine in the brain. All of a sudden, you see this hyperactivity in the brain. 3 days later, meditating, you see any red in there? Significant change in the Parkinson's. Now, this is what's called a QEEG. Don't panic. I want you to know that this range right here is delta. This range right here is theta. This range right here is alpha. This range right here is beta, low level. And if you see a lot of blue, it means there's no energy. If you see a lot of red, there's a lot of energy. You see green, it's normal. And then light blue and orange and yellow are just degrees of deviations from normal. This is mid-range beta right here. And this is high-level beta. Now look at this person with Parkinson's. Look at all this blue in her brain. That means there's no energy in the brain to control her body in alpha and in beta, mid-range beta, and low-level beta. Take a look at her brain just a few days later. What's green? Normal. Now you see this red here? This represents anxiety. And that's a lot of energy in mid-range beta, and she said, when I'm anxious, my tremors are worse, because with Parkinson's, if there's a deficiency in dopamine, then the body has involuntary tremors. You can't control it with your conscious mind, right? So when she's vigilant and when she's nervous or when she's anxious, her tremors get worse. And we say, now you know what you need to work on. So we ask her to continue doing her meditations, look more green in the brain, there's less red, and then her mother dies and her sister has a stroke in the same week, and she has to leave town and take care of her affairs, and look at all this red coming back. She comes back to the clinic and we say, don't worry about it, life happens, take care of your affairs and get back and start meditating again. So she starts meditating again, look at the improvement again, look at all this green in here. And this was the last scan we did on her, and more than 90% of this person's tremors were gone from Parkinson's disease, and she did that by thought alone. Traumatic brain injury, what color do you see in the brain here? Blue. There's no energy in the brain to control the body. This man went through the windshield of his car. His son was driving. His son died instantaneously. He's wheelchair bound. He's had a spinal surgery. And this is his brain just a few days after meditation. Take a look at his QEEG scores. See all the blue in alpha and in beta. It means he has problems with language, problems with happiness, problems with learning, problems with working memory. Take a look at his brain just a few days later. When I first met this guy, he was pretty much paralyzed from the nose down. He now has arm control, finger control. He has bladder control, bowel control. He's crawling now, and he's with assistance, has been able to stand up a few times. Now, I want to be very clear that it's not matter changing matter here. that it's not going to work that way. It's energy that's changing matter. And he always says to me, Dr. Joe, I have no idea what's going on. And I always say the same thing to him. The moment you know what's going on, it's over. This is CEO of a major company in the United States. She's an attorney. She's a mom. And she's having a lot of problems with controlling her thoughts. She has a lot of anxiety when she started this work. 3 days into her event, green is normal. This is the beginning of the event in February. Take a look at her brain just a few days later. All this red is gone. We ask her to keep doing her meditations. Hardly any red in high beta there. Look at this. High beta, all this red in high beta. This is her brain 3 days later. Take a look when she continues doing the work. What happens? Healed herself of serious, serious panic attacks just by meditation. This is depression. Look at all this blue in the brain. Look, blue, just a few days later, turns to green. Check this out. This is high beta. Look at all this green here. Now, this is a person with very severe depression. The way she went from all this blue in the brain to what color? And what's green? Now take a look at this. This is high beta. Take a look at her brain just a few days later. Significant change in depression. Now, somewhere in the middle of all of this, we're looking at brain scans, and the next thing you know, we start seeing something like this. This lady said to me, another one of these, and I don't need a husband. She was having a big release of energy in her brain. That's a full-on ecstatic experience. Psychotherapist came from a traumatic background, could never heal his trauma. Second generation, third generation of trauma. He has an inward event. Whatever's happening between his ears in that moment is more real than anything that he's ever experienced. He's having a full-on sensory experience without any senses. He's sitting there with his eyes closed, and whatever's going on between his ears is more real than anything outside of him. Now think about this. What would happen right now if your senses increased by 30%? Everything you're seeing, everything you're hearing, everything you're smelling, everything you're feeling, everything you're tasting. If your senses were heightened right now, your awareness of everything around you would be heightened, yes or no? And you can't have awareness without consciousness. Consciousness is awareness. And you can't have consciousness without energy. So a change in consciousness always produces a change in energy. And what's happening between his ears is a very real experience. An experience then molds and shapes the brain. An experience sends a new signal to the body. But what he's feeling is a level of bliss and ecstasy that has nothing to do with suffering. In a moment now, he had a significant change in his mental health in 1 second. All of a sudden, he had a very big change in his anxiety. So watch this. You have two waves that are functioning, and they come together, and if they're synchronized and they're in order, when they come together, they'll begin to add up and create a bigger wave. So here come the waves, and as they begin to connect to one another, all of a sudden, you'll see a higher wave. And this is more energy in the brain. So the higher the wave, the higher the amplitude, the higher the energy. So we started seeing those snowstorms on the strip charts that we were measuring. We had to figure out another way to measure it. So we found this way called the joint time frequency analysis. Now don't panic. All I want you to know is 10 to 60 millivolts of energy squared in the brain is normal. So what's normal? 10 to 60, yes? Check this guy out. 2 seconds into his meditation, that happens. Now he's at 86 microvolts of energy squared. 40 seconds into his meditation, another download of information, he's at 3,185 microvolts of energy. And another download here at 53 seconds. The nervous system settles down a little bit because it's a lot of energy. And then here we go again. The energy starts to build in the brain. It starts building. And all of a sudden, we see this. Now remember, this is normal. See a difference a little bit? Now, when neuroscientists see this, a lot of times they yell, seizure, seizure, and the person's like this. I always say, does that he look like he's having a seizure to you? And he taps out at 4,520 microvolts of energy squared. This is a physician in our work. She decides to give her best effort during this brain scan. This is a normal brain. You don't see a whole lot of activity going on in there. This is her pre-measurement. And all of a sudden, we start seeing this. Now she's switching from high beta into gamma right here. Now she's in a super conscious state. And this goes on for quite some time, as you can tell. And our neuroscientists they didn't know what to do. I had to run back there and tell them that they're yelling seizure. She's sitting there having this transcendental moment where she's connecting to the divine, and they're yelling seizure, and she's thinking, if this is a seizure, I want more of these. She could hear them. Now, this is what the actual brain scan looks like. You see the energy building? The computer actually has a little bit of its own seizure when the energy gets too high. Tilt, tilt. Now, when we're measuring coherence, when there's disorder in the brain, low coherence is blue, normal coherence, whatever normal is, the average in a human being is pink, and when you see a lot of good coherence, you see a lot of red, a lot of coherence. So think of coherence as everybody in the room clapping at the same time. And when everybody's clapping in unison, there's more energy because more order creates more energy. You with me? Now look at her brain scan. This is her brain, and she has so much coherence going on in her brain, and look at all this energy in her brain. Now, when we were measuring her brain, we were measuring the amount of gamma brainwave patterns that she had. She is 200 standard deviations outside of normal in a gamma brainwave pattern. That's a lot of energy in the brain. So check this out. There's this curve called the Z-curve, or a bell curve. If we took everybody in this room and we measured your eyesight, we measured your height, we measured your intelligence, whatever we were measuring, if we took a community of people and we measured whatever we were measuring, we would always see the same curve. And you'd see this big bell up here that would represent normal, the majority of people. That makes up 68% of the population. As the curve drops down, you have a person with a little better eyesight or a little worse eyesight. Then you have a few people with really great eyesight and really poor eyesight. That's about 2% on either end. This is about 13%, but the curve makes up 99.7% of the population is either 3 deviations above normal or 3 deviations below normal. You got it? So we're taking a look at height here, right? Here's a very tall person, here's the shortest person, but the majority of people fall into that bell curve, and that makes up 99.7% of the population. Now, she was 200 standard deviations outside of normal in a very high gamma brainwave pattern. So there's 5, there's 50, there's 100, there's 150. She's way out here. And that line just keeps getting closer and closer and closer, so that she's out there all alone. That's the amount of energy in her brain. Now, the area of the brain that becomes activated when energy moves from the body up into the brain and the gate opens up and the brain moves into that super aroused state is the pineal gland and this area right here called Brodmann's area 30. And we see this over and over again. The area around the pineal gland is getting stimulated, and the autonomic nervous system, not the thinking brain, that's turned off, but the autonomic nervous system is in a very high state of gamma. There's a lot of energy right around the pineal gland. This is the underside of the brain. The whole entire underside of the brain is in gamma. Now, she had a very serious condition called eczema from the time she was 3 months old. She's a doctor. She took the cortisone creams. She did the antihistamines. She stayed away from sugar, stayed away from alcohol, you know, matter to matter, trying to change it. This is her arm before the event. Take a look at her arm on the Monday morning afterwards. Here's her hand with the eczema. Take a look at her hand just the Monday after the event. She had a complete biological upgrade, and it was energy that changed matter. Her nervous system got an upgrade. How many people understand? Yes? Check this out. Here's another person. They're moving into that range of gamma, 260 standard deviations outside of normal. What area of the brain's lit up? Pineal gland and Brodmann's area 30, and that is when you have a euphoric, blissful, positive, long-term memory, and it's stored right in this area. Same thing, underside of the brain is in gamma. Take a look at this person. Normal brain waves, here we go. 160 standard deviations outside of normal in gamma again. Look at the coherence in his brain. In delta, in theta, in alpha, and beta, look at the amount of energy in his brain. Check this out. In Berlin, just last year, person all of a sudden starting to see the energy build in the brain. You see changes? 250 standard deviations outside of normal. Look at this, coherence in every level of the brain, and there's a lot of energy up there. Whole entire brain is lit up. And when we see now theta, when a person moves into a very solid state of theta, and there's a lot of energy in the brain, we know that they're going to switch into a gamma state. And that's one of the precursors. Look at all this coherence in the person's brain. So theta then becomes the wave. You get relaxed, you slow down, you connect to the field, and all of a sudden you switch on, and all of a sudden a person goes transcendental. So this person's 10 standard deviations outside of normal in theta, and when we see that, she moves into a very high state of gamma, a super conscious state. She is connecting to the field, and whatever's going on between her ears is absolutely real. In other words, she can't make her brain do that. It's happening to her. She's connected to the field, and a whole new stream of consciousness is moving through the brain, and she's going transcendental. Look at that. Super aroused. Now look at this person. Here we go. She's in theta. Coherence all the way through the brain. Check it out. 10 standard deviations outside of normal in theta. What's going to happen? We now know she's going to connect. 400 standard deviations outside of normal. This person is having a very profound transcendental moment. She will never be the same person again after that. And the whole brain is switching on, and the autonomic nervous system's processing a whole new stream of consciousness, and she's getting a biological upgrade in 1 second. Now we know how to induce the state. We now can predict when it's going to happen, and it can happen whether you eat meat, not eat meat, whether you're underweight, overweight, whether you're young or old, whether you're rich or poor. It happens to everybody once they apply the formula. Pineal gland, Brodmann's area 30 lit up. Here comes the energy from the body, opens up this system called the thalamic gate. That energy goes right up into the neocortex. The brain moves into gamma. The pineal gland is stimulated, and the next thing you know, I'll move through this quickly. These little tiny crystals in the pineal gland begin to become electrically activated. And the moment they become electrically activated, they can tune into frequencies like a radio receiver. And these crystals are stacked up on top of each other, and they're very sensitive to electromagnetism. Now, when you perceive light that makes it to the back of your brain, I have a slide missing here, either produces serotonin or melatonin. The absence of light begins to make melatonin. Well, when that system switches on, this is the range of wavelength that you're perceiving that begins to make serotonin. That small little wavelength of light is producing chemicals to cause you to be awake during the day and asleep if there's less light. So then your eye, the optic nerve, is picking up the wavelength of light, and it's causing you to function in three-dimensional reality. In the day, you're awake. In the evening, you're asleep. Now, what happens when the pineal gland becomes electrically activated? This is the small band of light that you're picking up with your eyes, but as frequencies go faster than the speed of light, all of a sudden you're picking up quantum information. And now, when the pineal gland becomes electrically activated, it begins to connect to frequencies beyond the speed of light. And the research shows that the pineal gland is a transducer. You know what that is? It takes one form of energy, like frequency, and turns it into a picture, the same way your television antenna takes information and turns it into pictures on the screen. So when the pineal gland becomes activated, all of a sudden it's picking up frequencies from the quantum faster than the speed of light and turning them into profound images. And it begins to make all these wonderful chemicals, chemicals that heal the body, chemicals that suppress anxiety and survival, chemicals that diminish sex drive and appetite and a preoccupation with the environment, chemicals that cause the brain to become like the same chemical found in an electric eel, highly amplified, hallucinogenic chemicals like dimethyltryptamine that cause you to have an inner vision that is more real than anything you've ever experienced, and that is a mystical, transcendental moment, and we're able now to predict when it's going to happen. We use a kaleidoscope and a mind movie to get people into a state where they can begin to see a movie of their future where they're a star. They make their own movies, and then we move from the kaleidoscope to induce trance. And then when they're in trance, check this out, they're gazing into a kaleidoscope on the screen, and their brain is in theta. If they're in theta, they're suggestible. So while they're gazing into the kaleidoscope and they're moving into trance, all of a sudden we ask them to switch to their mind movie, a movie that you create where you're the star. And as you're listening to the mind movie music and you're staring at all these images and your brain is in trance, you're not going to say, well, how's that going to happen? I don't have the money to afford that. The analytical mind is shut down, and the door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind is wide open, and you can program a person into an experience. Now look what happens when the person's watching their movie of their future. They're in gamma. They're in super aroused state, and they're not even moving. There's a picture of them right there. They're still. And their brain is literally accepting that information, and they're getting excited and aroused about their future. In other words, they're remembering their future. How many people understand? And this is their brain during the mind movie. Look how active it is in gamma. Look at this person watching their mind movie. This is gamma. They're having a very, very good time. They're enjoying themselves. I'm going to skip this one here. So here's our walking meditation. This is the guy's brain before he starts walking. You can tell he meditates. Look how orderly and coherent his brain is. Look at his brain after 1 hour on the beach. Look at this. He's at 400 standard deviations outside of normal in gamma. In 1 hour, he changed his brain like that. He never meditated before, by the way, before he came to our workshops. There he is, super aroused. Now we measure heart coherence. We say the brain thinks, but the heart knows. Elevated emotions like gratitude, love, joy, peace, wholeness, trust, knowingness, presence, empowerment activates this center. When this center is open, you tend to be more selfless, more giving, more caring, more present. When you're living by these lower centers, we tend to be more selfish, and we're in survival. So check this person out. They're wearing a heart rate monitor. We're asking them during a meditation to open their heart. Each one of these blocks is 5 minutes. So for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 50 minutes, they're in heart coherence in one meditation. Watch next. They go into another meditation after lunch, and for another 45 minutes, they're back into heart coherence. They're feeling love, and their heart is responding. It's getting more orderly. Check this out. Another 50 minutes, in another meditation, same person the next day, back into heart coherence. Now look at this. Would you call that super coherence? I would. But here's the deal. This person wasn't even in a meditation during this process. So I said to her, what in the world were you doing? And she said, okay, I was getting ready for bed. It was 8 o'clock at night. It says 8 o'clock right here. And all of a sudden, I had such an incredible feeling of love come over me that I had to lay on my back for the whole entire hour, and then I rolled on my side and went to sleep. That's not a bad way to end the day, huh? And you know, like when a person keeps obsessing about the worst thing that happens, that could happen to them, they hold an image in their mind and they begin to emotionally feel fear. Well, they're combining a thought, an image with an emotion, and that's how you condition. So the person conditions their body to become the mind of fear. And then all of a sudden, the body has a panic attack, and you can't control it with your conscious mind because you've programmed it subconsciously. Well, she's having a spontaneous love attack, just like a person has a spontaneous anxiety attack. Now check this out. 3 students sustaining heart coherence for 45 minutes. They're regulating. No person, no thing, no experience is going to move them from this state. They're learning how to master their environment. And now we're working with students to do it with their eyes open as well as their eyes closed. But in my advanced workshops, we have all the research to show that our students can do this in a quiet place, around safe people in an environment with soft music playing. There's no threats, there's no challenges. Well, let's put them in a situation now that could evoke some fear, that could cause them to doubt themselves, to cause them to go unconscious. And now let's ask them with their eyes open to be able to self-regulate, just like they did with their eyes closed, but in a more challenging situation. Why? Because when they return back to their lives and they are threatened or challenged in some way, they're not going to go unconscious. They're going to do exactly what they did. And when we set up the conditions that are really tough, if they're able to master it, when they return back to their lives, they'll say, "This is nothing. You should have seen what I just did at that retreat. Look at this person, really weak heart, 15 minutes, I'll take it. Look at that, no variability, and then beautiful. Again, another person, 15 minutes, I'll take it. Really weak heart, they're changing. Another person, I'll take it. 5 minutes, 8 minutes, I'll take it." Now check this out. We have 1,000 people in the room. We have all the people in the front of the room wearing the heart rate monitors. We go into a meditation. I say to the entire room, open your hearts, produce that field, send the thought on that frequency that the people in the front of the room, that their bodies be healed, that their lives be enriched, that their dreams come true, that the mystical find them. And at the exact same time, in the exact same day, during the exact same meditation, all of these people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 people go into heart coherence at the exact same time, the exact same day, in the exact same meditation. And they were sitting there receiving. Don't you know this is how we change the world, yeah? So now, I want to show you what an advanced workshop looks like if you ever have the opportunity to come. At what point do you come to the end and you no longer believe in yourself that you can do something? Whatever that edge is, some people will say, "I'm not going up there." And then if they make their way up there and just get to the top, that's their edge. Some people will go to the edge and then they can't settle their brain and body down because they don't think they can. And it takes a tremendous act of will and staying conscious and staying present and battling those chemicals, battling those voices, battling your body, shaking and doing what it does. You go a little further than where you think you can go, a little further outside of your known. That known is fear. That known is all those programs. You're breaking out of those programs. You're breaking out of the prison. Don't you know that there's a liberation of energy when you do that? But you got to be willing to get to the edge. This event is about waking up in your future.
Hello, good morning. And you're going to start telling the story of your future over and over again instead of the story of your past. So let go a little bit today. Loosen up. Come on, enjoy it.
Hell yeah, it's a new hallelujah. Popping like the top off a bottle and I ain't stopping, yeah. Baby, it's a brand new day. Ain't no clouds hanging over me. Something doesn't feel the same. The rest of my life gonna start today. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Take the ride with me. Just cross the river.
The rest of my life gonna start today. Crawling up the ocean, this is evolution. Can I grow into another animal, the next level? I'm sprouting wings and I just wanna sing. In the future now, the past can't harm me. Forget about yesterday, Paul McCartney. I'm feeling like a Beatle on stage, and the whole wide world's gonna know my name. Baby, it's a brand new day. Ain't no clouds hanging over me. Something doesn't feel the same. The rest of my life gonna start today. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. The rest of my life gonna start today. Ladies and gentlemen, this part right here is very simple. It goes like this. I've been up, I've been down, but I got the feeling right now. I've been up, I've been down, but I got the feeling right now. I've been up, I've been down. The rest of my life gonna start today. The rest of my life gonna start today.
Don't you know when you walk with an open heart and you are leading with your heart that you're trying a lot less and you're trusting in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet? You're beginning to embrace that future reality and experiencing the emotion of it. You walk with intent to get there. You straighten up. You close your eyes and you are going to change and self-regulate. Because when you open your eyes, you're going to be somebody else. Try it out. See what happens. Walking as your future self is the effort of overcoming your past self. That's all it is. If you decide that it's easy, or you're just going to try it out for an hour and see what happens, and you just start getting happy and smiling, don't you think your body is aware that you're doing it? You're actually saying, I'm going to change the energy of my body just to see what it does. The challenge activity is to test you to your edge. When people get to that point in their life, they don't think that they have any control. What is an initiation? You're taking an understanding, a philosophy. You're taking theory, knowledge, and now you're understanding it from an intellectual level. We set up the conditions in the environment, and you're going to have to make one of two choices: to fall back into a program and forget everything you've learned, or you're actually going to apply what you've learned in that moment to take you past those conditions. If you can settle your brain and body into the present moment, you're overcoming thousands of years of hardwired programs around fear. Why don't we just go over the edge?
Falling too fast to prepare for this. Tripping in the world could be dangerous. Everybody circling as vultures. Negative, nepotist. Everybody waiting for the fall of man. Everybody praying for the end of times. Everybody hoping they could be the one. I was born to run, I was born for this. Whip, whip, run me like a racehorse. Pull me like a ripcord.
The unknown is so far out there that you're going to have to be able to stay present, pay attention, rehearse what you're about to do. I'm going to settle this fear down. I'm going to settle that voice down. I'm going to settle my body down because I can. And stay present enough that you're able to execute it, and then you realize it was never as bad as you thought it was. It was just you being out of balance and not being able to focus in that moment or focus in your life.
Hypothetical, working on to something that I'm proud of. Out of the box and epoxy to the world and the vision we've lost. I'm an apostrophe. I'm just a symbol to remind you that there's more to see. I'm just a product of the system of catastrophe.
If I set the standard so high, when you come to the edge in your life, that bothersome feeling is going to come up and you're going to move past it. And if you step over that edge, I guarantee you, you will impress yourself. That person on the journey, sooner or later, is going to step over that edge. And then there's going to be another edge. And there's going to be another edge. You're looking for the edges now in your life that you want to move through, because now you're more awake. You want the initiation. You want the challenge. You're going to be challenged in your life, and the greater you become, the greater your challenges. That's evolution.
That was amazing! That was amazing!
Takes.
If I can do this, I can do just about anything.
When you come to the edge, all you have to do is initiate yourself into the experience. effort wakes the soul up. You just have to make up your mind that if anybody else can do it, you can do it. Now I'm initiated to take it to the next level, to challenge me to see if I'm able to go against those hardwired habits and conditions and do something differently. Now you're starting to become your future self.
Anyway, that's our advanced workshop. So, all of this information, all of this science and research that we've done is to prove to you how powerful you really are, that you have the innate capacity within you to heal, that you have the innate capacity to heal by thought alone, that you have a resource of energy and information that you can connect to and pay attention to and surrender to and stay aware of on a moment-to-moment basis. And when we do, we're able to execute greater effects in our lives. That the biggest lie that we've ever been told is that we're limited human beings living a limited one-dimensional life. And the truth is that we're dimensional beings living a dimensional life. And when the doors of dimension open to you and your brain is aroused by that frequency and the thrill in your nervous system wakes you up to who you really are, you just can't go back to being the same person again. And if we have enough people in the world that have the interest in creating one mind and one heart, that there's a principle in biology that I love called emergence. And emergence is when you see a school of fish all swimming in unison, in coherence, in order, or a flock of birds moving as one mind. And when you study this principle, you think that there's some leader that everybody's following, that it's a top-down phenomenon. But when you study it, the truth is it's actually a bottom-up phenomenon, that nobody's leading except everybody's leading. They're connected and they're moving as one mind and one heart. We should never wait for a leader to deliver us from where we are today. It won't be one leader. It's going to be all of us leading. And there's a stigma that we have in our minds. That if you lead with too much passion, any great person in history, most of them lost their lives for truth. But this is a time in history where it's not so important to die for truth. This is a time in history to live for truth. And if you're overcoming your fear and your anxiety, and the person next to you is overcoming their hostility and their anger, and everybody's working on themselves, something else will emerge. It is a new consciousness, a new energy, and that we are bound by this invisible frequency that causes us to connect to the field. And once energy makes it to our heart, the field begins to expand and we feel connected to something greater. And we are a living organism, a species of human beings. And what makes the living organism thrive is that we love one another, that we inform one another, that we teach one another, that we heal one another, that we shine for one another so others can shine, that we lead by example. And if everybody's leading, you just can't take out everybody now, can you? Thanks for listening. Thank you.